and I'd like to introduce Dr. Pambana Masame. Pambana is a human resource industrial relations practitioner. He's also a labor consultant, strategy advisor, and an entrepreneur. He has 20 years experience in leading in the public sector trade unions and also leading an HR function in blue chip micro lender companies. He currently works as an HR practitioner and will be speaking to us this morning about leadership in terms of the whole person approach to workplace learning. As an author, educator, dispute resolver, we are very happy to have with us this morning. And please, a round of applause for our last speaker of the day, Dr. Pambana Masame. Thank you, Pambana.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity. As it has been mentioned, my name is Dr. Masame. My topic today is going to be leadership is changing, and so are those who are being led. How do we deal with changes taking place in the workforce and amongst those leading the workforce or failing to lead them, which seems to be the case nowadays? It is critical for us to take a closer look at how people learn and how they could and should become the best versions of themselves. I invite you today to take with me a journey through the implementation of the whole person approach to workplace learning. So let us start by asking ourselves what we mean by whole person approach to learning. What we mean is that training needs to embrace a holistic method that accounts for the individual's vision and offers up resources that are needed to make that vision very real. People must understand the need for training and that training makes them themselves. Because training is designed to open our minds and give us the skills that we need to do the job well and to use our minds in doing that job. That is what we do in the training field. We open up resources to open up people's minds. In the world of work, I have been involved in self-directed learning. I have been in service for the past years. And it is my belief that we serve people and enable them to learn to embrace new skills and ideas. Let us begin by asking ourselves why business is there. The purpose of business is to offer value through products or customers who pay for the value with cash or any equivalent. The revenue received is used to operate the business and also provide for the life of the businessman and those who are hired to do the work. The labor needs to know what they are doing. They need to be happy and fulfilled in what they are doing. Happy employees actually create happy customers. And for employees to be happy, they should be encouraged and led to take charge of their destiny and future learnings. It is our job as HR to ensure that this takes place. Implementation of the whole person learning involves learning about individual self-awareness, offering individualized coaching, setting up a fund for self-directed learning, developing and implementing a supportive culture, and also purpose over profit. We'll discuss some of these issues here today. But I will not have done justice to this topic if I don't talk about heterogogy, because it is part and parcel of whole person approach to learning. It actually means self-determined learning. It is a learner-centered strategy that emphasizes the development of autonomy and capability with the goal of producing learners who are prepared for the complexities of today's workplace. So how is training situation in companies these days? Let's look at a few statistics. 59% of employees report no workplace training, and that most skills which they have self-taught themselves. 74% of workers are willing to learn new skills or to retrain in order to remain employable. 7% of millennials believe learning and development in the workplace is very, very important. And 59% of millennials claim that development of opportunities are extremely important when they are deciding to apply for a new position. It is only 29% of employees who are satisfied with their career opportunities that are available in their organizations. Many executives usually get frustrated when their training budgets are cut, because when it is COVID like this, the first budget to be cut is going to be training. Employees always demand to advance without relevant qualifications. And some managers actually get frustrated when employees cannot perform with the same aptitude as themselves. And some employers pay for employees, but the employees do not succeed at those trainings. And some of the employees, they do not complete the trainings which have been paid for by companies. Most companies usually offer a bare minimum. That is a checkbox mentality. They only train when it is required by law, train on the basic needs of the business. But will this produce well-rounded employees? Or will they produce productive employees? I don't think so. Does this give you a specialist who might be poised for future career path or promotion? Will this support a culture of innovation, collaboration, or creativity? No, no, no. My story began when I was stagnating at a government hospital. All efforts to get the ministry to listen to me hit a snag. I wrote the first letter to the ministry, waited for 3 months, there was no reply. I wrote another one, waited, no reply. After a year, I again wrote another letter. Still, there was no reply. Colleagues in the actually approached me to help them, as I was a union executive then. I couldn't even help myself. Eventually, I facilitated an engagement with the ministry. I actually telephoned the permanent secretary and forced the meeting. He agreed, but delegated his deputy to attend us. I presented a compelling case. The permanent secretary told us that she will go and in front of the permanent secretary so that we can be taken for further education, as we were stagnating for long. But she also mentioned something which actually was very profound. She said that you children, why do you leave your lives in the hands of the employer? So when I was laying on my bed that night, there were two things which I remembered from that meeting. I remembered that that lady who was the deputy permanent secretary is going to kneel on our behalf. And at the same time, I also remember that she said our lives should not be in the hands of somebody else. Our lives should not be in the hands of the employer. The inner man in me associated with the latter. I decided that day that the cost of my education should come from me, should come from my purse. But within 6 months, I was offered a scholarship to go overseas, but instead, I enrolled for a distance learning course. Later, I saw a scholarship opportunity through an Indian government in partnership with the African Union through a program they called tele-education. It is interesting that when a decision is made by the heart, opportunities to implement become visible. We must be convinced in our hearts that we can change a situation so that we have the determination and the motivation to do so. Let's now look at the principles of whole person approach to learning. The whole person learning should take account of the emotional, physical, and the spiritual dimensions of a person. The approach sees split as largely artificial, as it is interested in enhancing the individual's ability to take increasing personal responsibility for their own well-being. The core is for the ability of the person to learn to know themselves. This is not just about the mind, it is also about the heart. The whole person approach has excellent benefits. It actually builds trust in the work environment. It encourages employees to grow as people and as leaders. It shows employees that they are not just a number. So how do we promote an individual self-awareness? The whole person development is the ability for someone to know themselves and how to improve themselves. They have to know themselves and to know others and help others improve. Daniel Kahneman, the winner of the Nobel Prize winner and the author of Thinking Fast and Slow, he has proved through his studies that people act from emotion first, rationality second. We are all emotional driven creatures, and the whole person approach knows this. Self-awareness is a theory based on the we are not our thoughts, but an entity observing our thoughts. We are the thinkers, separate and apart from our own thoughts. So we can go about the day without giving our inner selves any extra thought, merely thinking and feeling and feeling. However, we also can focus our attention on that inner self, an ability which is termed self-evaluation. When we engage in self-evaluation, we can give some thought to whether we are thinking and feeling and acting as we should. This is referred to comparing us against our standards of correctness. We do this daily, using the standards as a way to judge the rightness of our thoughts and behaviors. Using these standards is a major component of practicing self-control as we evaluate whether we are making the right choices to achieve our goals. When we are able to analyze ourselves, we can align ourselves with organizational goals. But a self-aware individual will easily identify the gaps in soft skills required and actions to be taken. We don't just pretend that everything is fine. If something is not fine, we acknowledge and fix it. The benefits of self-awareness usually include more employees, boosts acceptance, and encourages self-development. Self-awareness allows us to see things from the perspective of others, to practice self-control, work creatively and productively, and experience pride in ourselves and our work, and also self-esteem. It leads to better decision-making. It also better at our jobs, better communicators in the workplace, and it enhances our self-confidence and job-related well-being. The big question will be, how do we get to happen in organizations? A very important practice that can be used at many levels and to take hold of that destiny is actually using mentoring and coaching. Mentoring and coaching actually helps to help the individual to deal with his or her emotions effectively. And the coaching should always be individualized, because the coach will actually assist the individual to actually gain a deeper level of learning, to build awareness, and he will offer some support. So support can be extremely beneficial, because just knowing that someone is there to help you achieve your goal is a very important part of progress. There can be emphasis on building skills, delegation, conflict management, team building, and also persuasion. Albert once said that wisdom is not a product of schooling, but the long life of acquiring it. Of course, we have to, none of this comes for free, but we should not give up. We have to get funding set up. So after assessing my readiness for learning, I had to set up my learning goals. By then I needed a degree in applied computer science. Our scheme of service was actually clear that for you to progress, you need to acquire certain qualifications. I actually quickly enrolled for one of the universities in the USA. The university offered self-paced learning, and actually they will give me all the books I needed. So after 4 semesters, a crisis came along. The pool which I was using to pay was devalued. So it meant that now I have to buy, I needed more money now to pay for education. Some few months later, in our country, they introduced what they called actually eroded. I had to drop out of that university. I didn't get the certificate, but the learning I got there was very profound. In other countries, there are some associations which actually fund learning. But for some organizations, it is best for them to actually help individuals to get training. The training does not need to come from accreditation. Who has accredited Harvard? Some trainings do not need any accreditation. So, and it is those which people need to train on. So some tuition reimbursement to employees is also very critical. It could be 50%, 75%, or it should actually 100. But if you can't, then the employee has to budget for himself, because there's nothing that can be done unless you plan. A famous quote from one of the leading business experts makes us think: if you think training is expensive, ignorance. The whole person approach encourages employees to control their own learning. Lack of finance should not be any hindrance, depending on the size of the organization. A bursary funding scheme could also be ideal. And this leads us to the final point, the role of the organization in self-development. The organization should always have clarity of goals. The central premise of goal setting theory is that it encourages individuals clear goals. Clear goals yield greater performance benefits than vague goals or just saying, do your best. Organization goals must be clear so that employees can be able to deduce the type of skills which are going to be required in the future for them to better fit. So the other thing the organization is to develop what we call a self-supportive culture. Because if there's no supportive culture, the organization will not, the employees or the entrepreneur or the leader there will not be able to learn. The other last point is what we call purpose over profit. As I close with this concept, the essence of this purpose is that you should create a business model which answers to social challenges. Purpose-driven organizations are better at creating results than organizations who purely focus on financial profits. So stimulating a long-lasting, sustainable value and positive impact is the new profit to be made. This is what usually we call social capitalism. Social capitalism is any capitalist system that is structured with the ideology of liberty, equality, and justice instead of just accumulating profits. Social capital looks at other social capital like the human capital and the natural capital. Remember, as John Maxwell said, everything stands and falls on leadership. Leadership is changing, ladies and gentlemen, and so are those who are being led. So to succeed, you have to implement a whole person approach to workplace learning. The employees have to take charge of their destiny. The employers have to provide a fertile ground for the process. And as I conclude, by their fruits, you will know them. Thank you very much.